My sister always bragged about her perfect marriage, so I forwarded her husband's dating profile to our entire family group chat. For 3 years, Delilah had made every family gathering unbearable with her constant gushing about how Brennan was the most devoted husband alive, how he brought her flowers every Friday, how he never looked at other women, how their love was so pure that other couples felt jealous just watching them. Meanwhile, I was getting divorced from my cheating ex-husband while she smirked and offered unsolicited advice. Maybe if you'd put more effort into your appearance, she'd say, examining her perfect manicure. Brennan says he fell in love with how I always look put together. Last month, I downloaded a dating app just to dip my toes back into the world of romance. I was swiping through profiles when a familiar face appeared. Brennan, age 34, looking for discreet fun with adventurous women. His bio read, married but wife doesn't understand my needs, looking for someone who can keep secrets. My stomach dropped. Then it filled with rage. The photos were recent. I recognized the shirt Delilah had bought him for Christmas. In one picture, he was shirtless in what looked like a hotel bathroom. Another showed him holding a drink at the bar where my family celebrated birthdays. I screenshotted everything. That Sunday, during our usual family dinner, Delilah launched into her routine performance about how blessed she was to have such a faithful husband, how marriage was so easy when you found your soulmate. Some women just don't know how to keep their men happy, she said, shooting a pointed look at me. I smiled and pulled out my phone. Speaking of keeping men happy, I said, I thought everyone should see how devoted Brennan really is. I forwarded the screenshots to our family group chat. Mom, dad, uncle, 3 cousins, and both grandparents. The reactions were immediate. Phones started buzzing around the dinner table like angry wasps. Delilah's face went white as she opened the messages. Her perfect composure cracked as she stared at her husband's shirtless selfies and his plea for discreet fun. This isn't real, she whispered. Someone's catfishing with his photos. But Uncle had already pulled up the active profile on his own phone. Says he was online 2 hours ago, he announced. Brennan chose that exact moment to walk in from the bathroom, completely oblivious to the digital wildfire consuming our family chat. What's everyone looking at? He asked cheerfully. Delilah held up her phone, showing him his own dating profile. The silence was deafening. Brennan's face cycled through confusion, panic, and finally resignation. He didn't even try to deny it. Delilah, I can explain. Don't, she cut him off, her voice deadly quiet. She stood up slowly, grabbed her purse, and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned back to him. By the way, those work trips to Seattle? I know about Miranda, and Ashley, and the girl from your gym. My jaw dropped. She'd known? Delilah smiled, but it wasn't the smug smile I was used to. This one was ice cold. I've been collecting evidence for 6 months. My divorce attorney says I'll get everything. As she walked out, her phone buzzed with a new message. I caught a glimpse of the sender's name, Private Detective Investigations. The front door slammed, leaving us all sitting in stunned silence around Mom's dining table. Brennan stood frozen in the doorway, his face cycling through what looked like the 5 stages of grief in fast forward. 6 months? He finally whispered. Dad set down his fork with deliberate precision. You might want to call a lawyer, son. Don't call him son, Mom snapped. He's not our family anymore. I watched Brennan's world collapse in real time. His phone started ringing, probably Delilah calling to twist the knife deeper. He fumbled for it, hands shaking. Delilah, please, we can work this out. Even from across the room, I could hear her laugh. It was sharp, almost musical. Work what out exactly? Your 3 affairs, your dating profile, or the fact that you've been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms? Brennan's face went gray. You know about the credit card? I know about everything, Brennan. Everything. The line went dead. Our cousin Rosalie, who'd been quietly documenting the whole scene on her phone, finally spoke up. This is better than reality TV. Put the phone away, Grandma scolded. But even she looked fascinated by the drama unfolding. Brennan slumped into the nearest chair, head in his hands. I need to go home. I need to explain. I wouldn't, Uncle said, refilling his wine glass. If she's been planning this for 6 months, your house has probably already changed locks and your stuff in garbage bags on the lawn. He wasn't wrong. 20 minutes later, Brennan's panicked call confirmed it. Not only had Delilah changed the locks, she'd also frozen their joint accounts and served him with divorce papers that were apparently hand-delivered by a very large process server who'd been waiting in the driveway. She timed this perfectly, Dad observed with grudging admiration. Sunday evening, banks closed until tomorrow. Most lawyers' offices shut down for the weekend. I pulled up Delilah's Instagram while Brennan made increasingly desperate phone calls to friends, begging for a place to crash. Her latest post was a photo of a glass of champagne with the caption, "To new beginnings and second chances. Sometimes the trash takes itself out." The comments were already pouring in from her friends, all wondering what had happened to her perfect marriage. By Monday morning, the story had spread through our entire extended family network. Delilah had masterfully controlled the narrative, sharing selected evidence with key family members who she knew would spread the gossip like wildfire. I got a text from my cousin Vera. Holy shit, did you see what Delilah posted about Brennan? Screenshots of his dating messages with 3 different women. One of them is married to his coworker, then another from cousin Raymond. Brennan's been staying at a motel. My buddy works there. Says he's been crying in the parking lot for 2 hours. But it was the call from Mom that really drove home how thoroughly Delilah had orchestrated Brennan's downfall. Your sister's attorney called me this morning, Mom said, her voice tight with barely contained glee. They want me to testify about conversations I overheard between you and Brennan at family gatherings. What conversations? Remember last Christmas when he was bragging about how easy it was to travel for work? How he had this whole system for booking hotels under fake names for client meetings? I remembered. At the time, it seemed like typical business traveler stuff. Now it felt like a confession. Delilah's attorney says it helps establish a pattern of deceptive behavior. My sister had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. The real masterstroke came Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when my phone exploded with notifications from our family group chat. Delilah had posted a video message. She sat in what looked like a coffee shop, perfectly composed, hairstyled, makeup flawless. She looked nothing like a woman whose marriage had just imploded. "Hi, everyone," she said, smiling serenely. "I wanted to address the elephant in the room and set the record straight about what happened on Sunday." She explained how she'd discovered Brennan's first affair 8 months ago, how instead of confronting him, she'd hired a private investigator to document everything. "I know some of you might think I should have said something sooner," she continued, "but I needed to protect myself legally and financially. Brennan had been systematically hiding assets and planning to leave me anyway. His dating profile wasn't just about cheating, it was part of a larger plan to abandon our marriage while keeping all our money." The video revealed bank statements showing Brennan had been secretly transferring funds to offshore accounts. Photos of property deeds he'd tried to put solely in his name. Screenshots of emails between Brennan and his divorce attorney from 3 months ago, discussing how to minimize financial exposure in a potential divorce. "So, when my sister found his dating profile and shared it with all of you," Delilah said, looking directly into the camera, "she actually saved me from a much worse situation. Brennan thought he was playing me. Instead, he played himself." The comments on the video were vicious. Family members who'd previously fawned over Brennan were now calling him every name in the book. His own mother had even commented, "I raised you better than this." But Delilah wasn't done. Wednesday brought the nuclear option. She'd somehow obtained security footage from the hotel where Brennan had been meeting his affairs. Not just any hotel. The same one where our cousin's wedding reception had been held last year. The same hotel where Brennan had given a speech about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of fidelity. The footage showed him checking in with 3 different women over the past 6 months. One of them was clearly recognizable as Ashley, the receptionist from his office who'd attended multiple family barbecues with her husband and kids. Delilah posted the footage to a private Facebook group that included not just our family, but also Brennan's coworkers, college friends, and basically everyone who'd ever known him. The social destruction was swift and complete. By Thursday, Brennan had been fired from his job. Ashley's husband had filed for divorce and was threatening to sue Brennan for alienation of affection. Miranda, the Seattle affair, had apparently sent screenshots of their conversations to her own husband, who happened to be Brennan's biggest client. "Brennan called me, desperate and sobbing. 'You have to help me,' he begged. 'Your sister is destroying my entire life.' 'She's not destroying your life,' I said calmly. 'She's revealing the life you were already living. But the whole family hates me now. I can't show my face anywhere. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on your wife and steal her money.' I wasn't stealing. Brennan, she has bank records. You moved $40,000 to an offshore account last month." Silence. "Please," he whispered. "I know we were never close, but can't you talk to her? Get her to stop this?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You want to know something funny?" I said. 3 years ago, when I was going through my divorce, Delilah told me that women who can't keep their husbands happy deserve what they get. She said I should have seen the signs earlier, should have fought harder. I remember that conversation. "Do you remember what you said?" He was quiet. "You said that smart women always have a backup plan, that they never get caught off guard." I let that sink in. "Congratulations, Brennan. You just learned what it looks like when a smart woman has a backup plan." I hung up. Friday brought the piece de resistance. Delilah had scheduled what she called a truth and reconciliation dinner at the same restaurant where Brennan had proposed to her 5 years earlier. She'd invited our entire extended family, plus several of Brennan's relatives who'd sided with her after seeing the evidence. I arrived to find her holding court at a large table, looking radiant in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She stood up when she saw me. "There she is," she announced. "The sister who saved my life." Everyone applauded. I sat down, confused. "I'm not sure I deserve credit for—" "Don't be modest," Delilah interrupted. "If you hadn't found his dating profile, I might never have had the evidence I needed to catch him in the act." She raised her champagne glass. "To family members who have your back, even when they don't know they're having it." As everyone toasted, she leaned over and whispered in my ear. "I've been monitoring his phone for months. I knew exactly when and where he'd be on dating apps. I just needed someone else to discover it so I'd look like the victim instead of the vengeful wife." My blood ran cold. She sat back, smiling that perfect smile. "You played your part beautifully." I stared at her, realizing I'd been as manipulated as everyone else. The dating app hadn't been a coincidence. She'd somehow known I'd downloaded it, known I'd find his profile, known I'd screenshot it and share it with the family. "How long have you been planning this?" I whispered. "Since the day I married him," she said quietly, so only I could hear. "Did you really think I'd marry a man without investigating him first? I knew about his cheating tendencies before our wedding. I just needed time to position myself legally and financially." "Why tell me this?" She sipped her champagne. "Because you deserve to know that your divorce wasn't your fault. Your ex-husband was a cheater and a liar, just like Brennan. The difference is I was prepared. You weren't." I felt sick. "I never loved Brennan," she continued conversationally. "I married him because he had money and connections. But I also knew he'd eventually cheat. And when he did, I'd be ready to take everything." Around us, our family was celebrating Delilah's escape from her terrible marriage. They had no idea they were actually celebrating a calculated heist that had been years in the making. "The private investigator?" I asked. "Been on my payroll since month 2 of our marriage. Every affair, every lie, every financial move, all documented. The offshore accounts?" I helped him set them up, convinced him it was smart tax planning. Of course, I kept copies of all the paperwork. I pushed back from the table. You're a sociopath. She laughed. The same musical laugh I'd heard her use on Brennan over the phone. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my wrist. Where are you going? The party's just getting started. I can't be part of this. You already are part of this. You were part of it the moment you sent those screenshots to the family chat. She was right. I'd been her unwitting accomplice. Don't look so upset, she said, releasing my wrist. You got your revenge on me, didn't you? All those years I made you feel bad about your failed marriage, and now you know I was just as miserable as you were. We're even. This isn't even. This is insane. This is justice. Brennan deserved everything that happened to him. I couldn't argue with that. Brennan had been a cheater and a thief, but Delilah's coldly calculated revenge felt like something else entirely. What happens now? I asked. She smiled. Now I take my settlement money and disappear. I'm thinking Italy, maybe Greece, somewhere warm where 40-year-old divorcees can start over. And Brennan will rebuild his life, sadder but wiser, or he won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. As I left the restaurant, I felt like I was walking away from a crime scene. Technically, no laws had been broken. Delilah had simply been smarter and more prepared than her cheating husband. But the methodical way she'd destroyed him, the years of planning, the careful manipulation of evidence and witnesses, felt like something darker than justice. 2 weeks later, Delilah was gone. She'd liquidated everything, the house, the cars, their shared investments, and disappeared overnight. She left a note for the family explaining that she needed space to heal from the trauma of her marriage. Brennan, meanwhile, had been reduced to living in a studio apartment and working at a car dealership. His attempts to contest the divorce had failed spectacularly when more evidence of his financial impropriety came to light. I found myself in an odd position. Our family treated me like a hero for exposing Brennan's cheating, but I knew the truth. I'd been played as thoroughly as everyone else. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd resented Delilah's perfect marriage, her smug superiority, her condescending advice about my failed relationship. Now I knew she'd been living a lie even bigger than mine. But unlike my ex-husband, who'd cheated impulsively and stupidly, Delilah had turned deception into an art form. She'd spent 5 years married to a man she didn't love, playing the perfect wife while systematically preparing to destroy him. I wasn't sure which was worse, being the cheater or being the person who married a cheater specifically to ruin them. 6 months after the dinner debacle, I got a postcard from Santorini. No return address, just a photo of a sunset over white buildings and blue water. On the back, in Delilah's perfect handwriting, "Thanks for playing your part. The new life is everything I hoped it would be." I threw the postcard in the garbage, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in Greece, my sister was living exactly the life she'd always wanted. And the most disturbing part was that she'd gotten it by being exactly who she'd always been: beautiful, calculating, and utterly ruthless. A year later, I ran into Brennan at a grocery store. He looked older, worn down by everything that had happened. When he saw me, he actually smiled. "How are you holding up?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Better than I expected," he said. "Therapy helps. Turns out I had a lot of issues to work through." "Are you angry at her?" He considered the question. I was. But honestly, she was right about one thing. I was planning to leave her and take as much money as I could. The difference is she was better at it than I was. "Do you regret marrying her?" "I regret marrying her for the wrong reasons. I regret cheating. I regret trying to steal from her." He paused. "But I don't regret finding out who she really was before she could do worse damage." As he walked away, I realized he might be the only person who truly understood what had happened. Delilah hadn't just been getting revenge, she'd been showing him exactly who they both were. Two predators who'd circled each other for 5 years, each thinking they were hunting the other, until one of them finally made their move. The only difference was that she'd been patient enough to let him destroy himself first. I still get postcards sometimes, never from the same place twice. Mykonos, Tuscany, Barcelona, always the same message: brief thanks for my role in her liberation. I never write back. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I'd never downloaded that dating app, if I'd never found Brennan's profile, if I'd never sent those screenshots to the family chat. Would Delilah have found another way to spring her trap? Or would she still be playing the perfect wife, waiting for the right moment to strike? I suspect she would have found a way. People like my sister always do. The scariest part isn't that she manipulated all of us. It's that she did it so well that even now, knowing the truth, part of me still admires her for it. She'd taken everything from a man who tried to take everything from her. She'd done it legally, methodically, and with surgical precision, and she'd used his own family to help her do it. Maybe that's why the postcards bother me so much. They're not just thank you notes. They're reminders that I helped her become exactly who she wanted to be. The question I can't answer is, what does that make me? 3 years have passed since the great family dinner disaster, and life has settled into a new normal. Mom still brings up the Brennan situation at every gathering, usually when she's had too much wine. Dad just shakes his head and mutters about women these days having too many secrets. Our uncle started a conspiracy theory that Delilah is working for the FBI now, using her skills to take down white-collar criminals. Cousin Rosalie insists she spotted her in a travel magazine, posing on a yacht in the Mediterranean with some European businessman. I've stopped trying to correct their romanticized versions of events. The truth is messier than their theories. Delilah wasn't a secret agent or an international woman of mystery. She was just someone who'd learned early that the world could be cruel to women who weren't careful. I think about that sometimes when I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling. How many women are out there right now playing roles they hate, collecting evidence, preparing for wars their husbands don't even know they're fighting? How many perfect marriages are actually elaborate long-term cons? The postcards stopped coming last year. The final one was from a small town in Portugal, with a picture of a farmer's market. The message was different this time. Started teaching English to local kids. Some games are worth winning. Others are worth walking away from. I chose both. I'd like to think that means she found some kind of peace. That maybe she's discovered how to be happy without destroying someone else first. But I'm not naive enough to believe it. Last month, I got engaged to a man named Theodore who teaches high school history and coaches Little League on weekends. He's kind, honest, and so transparent about his feelings that sometimes it's almost uncomfortable. When I told him the story about Delilah and Brennan, he was quiet for a long time. "Do you think she really loved him?" he finally asked. "I don't think she's capable of loving anyone." "That's sad." "Is it? She got everything she wanted." He considered this. Did she, though? She spent 5 years of her life married to someone she despised, living in a house that felt like a prison, pretending to be happy every single day. That sounds like its own kind of hell. I'd never thought about it that way. Maybe the real tragedy, Theodore continued, is that she was so convinced she had to manipulate everyone that she never gave anyone the chance to actually love her. Someone did love her. Brennan might have been a cheater, but in the beginning, he really thought she was perfect. But she never let him see who she really was. So he fell in love with a performance, not a person. Theodore's right, of course. Delilah had been so busy playing chess that she'd forgotten there was another way to live. But I can't shake the feeling that she'd tried the other way once and it hadn't worked out. After all, someone had taught her to be so calculating. Someone had shown her that love without leverage was just weakness waiting to be exploited. Maybe her first marriage had been real. Maybe she'd been trusting and open and genuinely in love. And maybe someone had destroyed her for it. Maybe Brennan wasn't her first victim. Maybe he was her revenge against whoever had made her this way in the first place. Or maybe I'm overthinking it because I can't accept that my sister is exactly what she appears to be. A woman who sees relationships as transactions and people as tools to be used. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. She's gone. Brennan's rebuilding his life, and I'm planning a wedding to a man who thinks manipulation is what you do to pie crust, not people. But sometimes I still catch myself wondering, if Theodore ever cheated on me, if he ever tried to steal from me or abandon me, would I have learned enough from watching Delilah to protect myself? Would I be smart enough to be patient? Calculating enough to collect evidence? Cold enough to destroy someone who'd tried to destroy me? The honest answer scares me. Because part of me, the part that spent 3 years listening to Delilah's condescending advice about my failed marriage, the part that felt humiliated and small and stupid for not seeing my ex-husband's cheating coming, that part of me thinks my sister was brilliant. She saw a threat and she neutralized it completely. She turned the tables on a man who thought he was smarter than her. She walked away with everything while he lost everything. And she did it all while making everyone else think she was the victim. If that's not genius, it's at least a masterclass in strategy. The question that keeps me awake at night isn't whether what she did was right or wrong. The question is whether I'm strong enough to be that strategic if I ever need to be, or whether I'm naive enough to believe I'll never need to be. Theodore would probably say that's the wrong question entirely. That the goal isn't to be prepared for war, it's to choose partners who aren't looking for a fight. He'd probably say that real love means trusting someone enough to be vulnerable with them, even knowing they could hurt you. He'd probably say that Delilah's problem wasn't that she was too trusting, it was that she was so afraid of being hurt that she chose to hurt first. And he'd probably be right about all of that. But he's never been married to someone who spent 2 years systematically draining their bank account while pretending to plan a future together. He's never sat across from a divorce attorney listening to evidence of betrayals so elaborate they might as well have been military campaigns. He's never had to rebuild his entire sense of self after discovering that everything he thought he knew about his marriage was a lie. I have. So while I love Theodore's optimism, while I appreciate his faith in human nature, while I want to believe that choosing good people means never having to prepare for them to turn bad, I also know how quickly good people can become strangers. I know how fast love can turn into leverage, and I know that women who don't prepare for betrayal are women who get destroyed by it. Maybe that makes me more like Delilah than I want to admit. Maybe that's why her postcards felt less like gloating and more like recognition, one survivor acknowledging another. Maybe that's why I never threw them away, even after I told myself I had. They're still in my jewelry box, tucked behind the engagement ring Theodore gave me, hidden but not forgotten. Insurance policies written in my sister's perfect handwriting, reminders that love is wonderful, but documentation is forever, just in case I ever need to remember which one matters more. The morning of my engagement party, I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, holding one of Delilah's postcards, the one from Portugal, with her message about walking away from some game. For the first time, I wondered if she'd been trying to tell me something, not about revenge or manipulation or the art of destroying your enemies, about knowing when to stop playing altogether, about finding the courage to want something real, even if it means giving up the safety of emotional distance, about choosing trust over strategy, even when strategy has never let you down. I put the postcard back in the jewelry box and closed the lid. Maybe that's the real difference between me and Delilah. She learned how to win every game she played, but I'm still learning how to stop playing games entirely. Whether that makes me braver or more foolish than her remains to be seen. But for the first time in years, I'm willing to find out. The engagement party was perfect. Theodore's family welcomed me like I'd always been part of their clan. My family told embarrassing stories about my childhood and pretended that the Delilah situation had never happened. Everyone laughed and danced and made toasts about true love conquering all. It was exactly the kind of celebration Delilah would have orchestrated flawlessly. Except this time, the happiness was real. At midnight, as Theodore and I cleaned up champagne glasses and crumpled napkins, he asked me the question I'd been dreading. Are you going to invite her to the wedding? I'd been avoiding this decision for months. I don't know where she is. You could find her if you wanted to. He was right. Delilah was smart, but she wasn't a ghost. If I hired the right private investigator, tracked down her financial accounts, followed the paper trail she'd inevitably left behind, I could probably locate her within a month. Do you want me to find her? I asked. Theodore considered this carefully. He always considered everything carefully, which was one of the reasons I loved him. I want you to do whatever feels right to you, he finally said. But I also want you to think about why you're making that choice. What do you mean? Are you not inviting her because you don't want her there? Or because you're afraid of what she might do if she comes? I started to answer, then stopped. The truth was complicated. Part of me missed my sister. Not the calculating manipulator who'd orchestrated Brennan's downfall, but the girl who'd taught me how to braid friendship bracelets when we were kids, the teenager who'd stayed up all night helping me study for chemistry tests, the young woman who'd held my hand during Dad's cancer scare, before marriages and divorces and betrayals had turned us into strangers. But another part of me was terrified of her. Not because I thought she'd ruin my wedding. She was too smart for such obvious sabotage. Because I was afraid she'd look at Theodore and see weaknesses I hadn't noticed, vulnerabilities that could be exploited, cracks in our foundation that I'd been too happy to examine. I was afraid she'd ask questions I didn't want to answer, like, have you checked his financial accounts lately? Or, are you sure he's not just marrying you for your inheritance from Grandpa? Or, what's your exit strategy if this doesn't work out? Questions that would poison every conversation, every gesture, every moment of trust we'd built together. I said slowly, I'm afraid she'll make me paranoid. Theodore nodded like he'd expected this answer. Do you trust me? He asked. Yes. Do you trust yourself? I think so. Then why would it matter what she thinks? Because she'd been right about Brennan, I wanted to say. Because her instincts about people were sharper than mine. Because she'd seen through everyone's lies while I'd been blindly trusting. But I also knew that wasn't the whole truth. The real reason I was afraid of Delilah wasn't that she might expose Theodore's flaws. It was that she might expose mine. She might look at our relationship and see all the ways I was still protecting myself, all the emotional walls I hadn't torn down yet, all the strategies I was still using, even with someone I claimed to love completely. She might recognize that I was still playing games, even if I'd convinced myself I'd stopped. You're overthinking this, Theodore said gently. Probably. Want to know what I think? I nodded. I think you should invite her. Not because you have to, but because you want to find out what happens when you choose trust over fear. What if she ruins everything? Then we'll deal with it together. But what if she doesn't? What if seeing you genuinely happy is exactly what she needs to remember who she used to be? Theodore's optimism was both endearing and naive. He couldn't imagine someone like Delilah because he'd never had to protect himself from anyone who shared his DNA. But maybe that was exactly why I'd fallen in love with him. He made me want to be the kind of person who gave people second chances, who chose vulnerability over self-preservation, who believed that happy endings were possible, even for families as messy as mine. Okay, I said. I'll find her. It took 3 weeks and a private investigator named Raymond who specialized in tracking down missing persons. Delilah had covered her tracks well, but she hadn't anticipated that I'd hire someone as thorough as she was. She was living in a small coastal town in Portugal, just like the postcard had suggested, teaching English at a local school, renting a cottage that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and apparently dating a widowed fisherman named Miguel who had 2 teenage daughters. According to Raymond's report, she'd been using her real name for everything: bank accounts, rental agreements, work permits, no fake identities, no elaborate cover stories, just Delilah, living what appeared to be a remarkably normal life. Either she'd genuinely changed, or she'd gotten so confident in her abilities that she didn't bother hiding anymore. I decided to call, rather than send a letter. If she hung up on me, at least I'd know where we stood. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice sounded different. Softer, maybe. Less practiced. It's me, I said. Silence. Then, how did you find me? Does it matter? I suppose not. How are you? I'm getting married. Congratulations. Is he decent? The question caught me off guard. Not because it was invasive, but because it sounded genuinely concerned. He's wonderful. Good. You deserve wonderful. I'd expected sarcasm or manipulation or some elaborate test. Instead, she sounded like she meant it. I want to invite you to the wedding. Another silence. Longer this time. That's probably not a good idea. Why? Because I'm not the same person I was when I left. And you're not the same person either. We might not know how to be sisters anymore. Maybe we could learn. She laughed, but it wasn't the sharp musical sound I remembered. This laugh was warmer, more genuine. You sound happy. I am happy. Then why do you need me at your wedding? It was a fair question. One I'd been avoiding asking myself. Because you're my sister. Because I miss you. Because I want to find out if we can be family again. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we tried. I heard voices in the background. Children laughing. Someone speaking Portuguese. The sounds of a life that had nothing to do with revenge or manipulation or elaborate long-term cons. I'll think about it, she said finally. The wedding's in 3 months. June 15th. I know when it is. I may have disappeared, but I still follow the family social media. Of course she did. Delilah had always been thorough. Will you let me know either way? Yes. We hung up without saying goodbye, but somehow it didn't feel like an ending. 2 months later, I got a text message. I'll be there. Looking forward to meeting Theodore. No apologies for the past. No promises about the future. Just a simple acceptance of my invitation. I showed the message to Theodore, who smiled like he'd never doubted she'd come. Are you nervous? He asked, terrified. Good. That means it matters to you. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before dawn and found myself standing in my childhood bedroom, looking through old photo albums. Pictures of me and Delilah as kids, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings, family vacations where we'd been inseparable. In every photo, we were touching somehow. Arms around each other's shoulders, hands clasped together, leaning against each other like we were two parts of the same person. When had we stopped touching? When had we started keeping secrets? I couldn't remember exactly when the change had happened, but I could see it in the later photos. The increasing distance between us, the careful positioning that kept us in the same frame but never quite connected. By the time we were adults, we looked like strangers who happened to share a last name. You ready for this? Mom asked, appearing in the doorway with my wedding dress. As ready as I'll ever be. Your sister's here. My heart skipped. How does she look? Different. Older, maybe. Or just calmer. I spent the next 2 hours getting ready, wondering what I'd say to Delilah when I saw her, whether we'd hug or shake hands or just nod politely like acquaintances, whether she'd look at Theodore and see threats I'd missed, whether I'd look at her and remember all the reasons I'd learned not to trust her. But when I walked into the bridal suite and saw her standing by the window, wearing a simple blue dress and minimal makeup, all my prepared speeches disappeared. She turned when she heard me enter, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Then she smiled. Not the perfect, calculated smile I remembered, but something softer and more uncertain. You look beautiful, she said. So do you. And she did. Not in the polished, untouchable way she'd cultivated during her marriage to Brennan. This version of Delilah looked approachable, human, like someone I might actually want to have a conversation with. I brought you something, she said, reaching into her purse. I tensed, old habits making me suspicious of any gift from her. She pulled out a small wrapped box and handed it to me. Inside was a bracelet made of braided threads in blue and gold, the colors I'd chosen for my wedding. It was clearly handmade, the kind of friendship bracelet we used to make as kids. I know it's not very sophisticated, she said, but I thought, maybe you'd like something from the person I used to be, before everything got so complicated. I fastened it around my wrist, next to the expensive jewelry Theodore's mother had given me. It's perfect. We stood there for another moment, neither of us sure what came next. I owe you an apology, she said finally. For which part? All of it. Using you to expose Brennan, making you feel bad about your divorce, being the kind of sister you couldn't trust with your happiness. I'd imagined this conversation dozens of times, but I'd never expected it to feel so anticlimactic. I understand why you did it, I said. Understanding doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it forgivable. She looked surprised. Just like that? Just like that. Because the truth was, I was tired of carrying resentment around like armor. I was tired of analyzing everyone's motives and preparing for betrayal and living like love was a war waiting to happen. I wanted to be the kind of person who could forgive her sister and mean it, who could choose hope over cynicism, even when cynicism had kept me safer. I met someone, Delilah said suddenly. Miguel, her eyes widened. You know about Miguel? I hired a private investigator to find you. His report was very thorough. She laughed. Of course you did. I'm impressed. I learned from the best. Miguel's nothing like Brennan, she continued. He's not rich or connected or ambitious. He's just kind. His daughters are teaching me Portuguese and I'm helping them with their English homework. It's the most normal thing I've ever done. Do you love him? She considered the question seriously. I don't know yet, but I like who I am when I'm with him. I like the person his daughters think I am. I like waking up without having to remember which role I'm playing that day. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. That sounds like love to me. Maybe it is. I'm still learning how to tell the difference. The wedding coordinator appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Ladies, we're ready for you. Delilah squeezed my hand. Are you nervous? No, I realized. I'm not. And I wasn't. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, I was walking into something important without a backup plan, without an exit strategy, without documentation or evidence or insurance policies hidden in jewelry boxes. I was choosing to trust completely, knowing I could be hurt, and deciding that the possibility of happiness was worth the risk. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. The ceremony was beautiful. Theodore's vows made half the guests cry, including his father, who'd insisted he was too tough for tears. My vows were shorter but no less heartfelt, a promise to choose love over fear, honesty over strategy, and partnership over self-protection. When the officiant pronounced us married and Theodore kissed me, I felt something inside me settle. A knot of tension I'd carried for years finally loosened. During the reception, I watched Delilah charm Theodore's family with stories from our childhood, carefully edited versions that highlighted our bond rather than our conflicts. She danced with our father, listened patiently to our grandmother's complaints about modern music, and helped my teenage cousin with her algebra homework. She was, in other words, the sister I remembered from before everything went wrong. Late in the evening, she found me on the terrace, taking a break from the celebration. Thank you for inviting me, she said. Thank you for coming. He's good for you, Theodore. I can see it in the way you carry yourself. What do you mean? You used to hold yourself like you were expecting a blow, like you were always braced for impact. Tonight, you look open, unguarded. Is that bad? It's terrifying, she said with a smile. And it's exactly how people look when they're genuinely happy. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars reflect off the lake where Theodore and I had gotten engaged. I have something to tell you, Delilah said, about the postcards. What about them? They weren't thank you notes. They were apologies. I just didn't know how to say sorry directly. For using me? For making you think that manipulation was strength. For teaching you to be suspicious of everyone who claimed to love you. For making you believe that protecting yourself was more important than trusting other people. She turned to look at me directly. You were right to invite me tonight. Not because I deserved it, but because choosing forgiveness over resentment is exactly the kind of person you should be. What kind of person is that? The kind who gets to be genuinely happy. The kind who doesn't have to play games because she's brave enough to want real things. Inside, the band started playing our last dance song. Theodore appeared in the doorway, looking for me. Go, Delilah said. Dance with your husband. Husband. The word sounded impossibly perfect. As I walked toward Theodore, I felt Delilah watching me, but instead of the calculating gaze I remembered, this felt protective, supportive, like a sister who actually wanted me to be happy. 3 months later, I got one final postcard, this time from Portugal, with a picture of a fishing boat at sunset. The message was brief, told Miguel everything. He said my past doesn't scare him. It just makes him appreciate who I am now. Thank you for showing me it was possible to stop running from myself. Your sister, Delilah. I showed it to Theodore, who read it twice before smiling. Think she'll stay this time? I think she's figured out that running was never really about geography. What was it about? Running from the possibility that someone might love her exactly as she is, without strategies or games or perfect performances. And now she's learning what you taught me, that love isn't a war you have to win. It's a choice you make every day. Theodore kissed my forehead. Smart woman, your sister. The smartest. It just took her a while to figure out what was worth being smart about. I put the postcard in our kitchen drawer, next to takeout menus and grocery lists and all the other detritus of normal, boring, beautifully ordinary married life. For the first time in our relationship, a message from Delilah felt like a gift instead of a test. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not the absence of complicated history, but the presence of people who choose to write better endings. 6 years have passed since my wedding day. Theodore and I have a 3-year-old daughter named Iris who inherited her aunt's strategic mind, but uses it primarily to negotiate extra bedtime stories and convince us that ice cream counts as a vegetable if it has strawberries in it. Delilah lives in Portugal with Miguel and his daughters, who call her Tia Delilah, and apparently consider her the coolest adult in their lives. She sends Iris birthday cards with elaborate hand-drawn pictures of Portuguese castles and fishing boats, and Skype calls on Sunday evenings where she teaches our daughter basic Portuguese phrases that she then uses to confuse her preschool teachers. Last summer, we visited them for 2 weeks. I was nervous. It was the longest time Delilah and I had spent together since we were teenagers, but watching her with Iris was like seeing her childhood self again, patient, playful, completely present. She taught my daughter to build sandcastles and catch minnows in tide pools and recognize different types of seabirds. On our last night there, after Iris was asleep, the 4 of us sat on Miguel's porch drinking wine and watching the sunset. I have a confession, Delilah said suddenly. My stomach tightened. Old habits. What kind of confession? I've been thinking about moving back to the States. Theodore and I exchanged glances. Why? I asked carefully. Miguel's oldest daughter is starting college next year. His youngest will graduate in 3 years. And she paused, searching for words. I miss having a family. A real family. Not just the family I chose, but the one I was born into. What about Miguel? He'd come with me. His daughters could visit during summer breaks and holidays. We've talked about it. I tried to process this information. The idea of my sister living nearby again after so many years of distance felt both wonderful and terrifying. Where would you want to live? Maybe an hour from you guys. Close enough to see Iris regularly. Far enough that we're not in each other's business every day. What would you do for work? Teach, probably. I've gotten good at it. And Miguel could start a fishing charter business. There are plenty of rich people who'd pay good money to learn traditional Portuguese fishing techniques. It sounded reasonable, practical, completely normal, which somehow made it more frightening than any of her elaborate schemes had been. You don't have to decide tonight, she said, reading my expression. Just think about it, please. That night, Theodore and I lay in bed listening to the ocean waves and talking in whispers. Are you worried about her moving back? He asked. Should I be? I don't know. You know her better than I do. But did I? The Delilah I'd grown up with had been capable of both fierce loyalty and calculated betrayal. The Delilah who destroyed Brennan had been brilliant and ruthless and completely untrustworthy. This version of Delilah seemed genuinely changed. But people didn't usually transform this completely, did they? What does your gut tell you? Theodore asked. That she's different. That the life she's built here has made her into someone I could actually be friends with. But I'm scared that I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's really there. Theodore was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared that if she moves back, you'll find out whether you've really changed as much as you think you have. He was right, as usual. The version of myself that I'd become. The trusting wife, the relaxed mother, the woman who chose love over strategy. She'd been built in safe spaces. With Theodore, who was incapable of deception. With friends who wore their hearts on their sleeves. With a daughter too young for complicated motivations. I'd never tested this new version of myself against someone who could see through it. Someone who'd taught me to be suspicious in the first place. I want to believe I've changed, I said. Then maybe it's time to find out. The next morning, I found Delilah sitting on the beach, watching the sunrise. I sat beside her without speaking. You're thinking about my proposal, she said. How do you know? You get the same expression when you're trying to decide whether to trust someone. You've had it since you were little. And what expression is that? Like you're doing complicated math in your head, weighing risks against benefits. She wasn't wrong. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Are you really as changed as you seem? Or are you just better at hiding your calculations now? She smiled, but it wasn't defensive. If anything, she looked relieved by the question. Both, probably. I still notice things other people miss. I still think strategically about relationships and outcomes. But now I use those skills to protect the people I love instead of protecting myself from them. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm not looking for ways to hurt people anymore. I'm looking for ways to help them. She picked up a shell and turned it over in her hands. When Miguel's youngest daughter was being bullied at school, I didn't encourage her to fight back or get revenge. I helped her figure out how to make the bullies irrelevant by building stronger friendships with other kids. And that worked better than any of my old methods would have, because instead of creating enemies, we created allies. I could see the logic in that approach. It was still strategic thinking, but pointed in a completely different direction. Do you miss it? I asked. The old way of doing things? Sometimes. There was a certain satisfaction in outmaneuvering people who underestimated me, but this is better. How do you know? Because I sleep through the night now. Because I don't have to remember which version of myself I'm supposed to be with different people. Because I can let people surprise me without assuming they're trying to manipulate me. She looked at me directly. And because I have people in my life who love me for who I actually am, not for the performance I put on for them. It was the most vulnerable thing she'd ever said to me. Okay, I said. Okay, what? Okay, you can move back. We'll figure it out as we go. Her face lit up with genuine joy. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. No games, no manipulation, no strategic maneuvering. If you have a problem with me or Theodore or anyone in our family, you talk to us directly. Agreed. And if I ever get that feeling that you're not being honest with me, I'm going to call you on it immediately. No more wondering if I'm being paranoid. I would expect nothing less. And you have to promise me that if you ever feel yourself slipping back into old patterns, you'll tell me. Or tell Miguel. Or tell someone who can help you stop before you hurt people. She nodded seriously. I promise. All of it. We shook hands, and then, for the first time in probably 15 years, we hugged. It felt like coming home. Delilah and Miguel moved to a small town about an hour from us 8 months later. True to her word, she got a job teaching ESL at the local community college, while Miguel started a fishing charter business that became surprisingly popular with weekend warriors from the city. They bought a small house with a guest room for his daughters, and a garden where Delilah grows vegetables and herbs that she brings to our family dinners every Sunday. The transition wasn't seamless. There were moments when I caught glimpses of her old calculating self, the way she assessed new people, the strategic way she approached social situations, the careful attention she paid to power dynamics in group settings. But Theodore was right. Instead of using those skills to exploit weaknesses, she used them to help people feel included and valued. When my friend Carolyn was going through a difficult divorce, Delilah didn't offer to destroy her ex-husband. Instead, she connected Carolyn with a support group and helped her find a therapist who specialized in rebuilding self-esteem after emotional abuse. When our neighbor's teenage son was struggling with depression, Delilah didn't try to fix him herself. She researched local mental health resources and shared them with his parents in a way that felt supportive rather than intrusive. She was still strategic, she was still observant, she was still capable of seeing patterns other people missed, but now she was using those abilities to build people up instead of tear them down. Iris adored her from the moment she arrived. Within a week of Delilah's move, my daughter had decided that Aunt Delilah was the most interesting person in the world. Delilah taught her card games and origami and basic Portuguese, and listened with genuine fascination to Iris's elaborate theories about why unicorns were probably real, but just very good at hiding. She's different with children than I expected, Theodore observed one evening after Delilah had spent the afternoon building an elaborate fort in our living room with Iris. Different how? Patient, present, like she has all the time in the world. He was right. With adults, Delilah was still somewhat guarded, still calculating the right thing to say or do. But with Iris, she was completely natural. Maybe that's because children are terrible at manipulation, so there was nothing for her to defend against. Or maybe it's because children love unconditionally, so there was nothing for her to earn or prove. Either way, watching them together made me realize that the part of Delilah that had been capable of love and trust and genuine connection had never actually disappeared. It had just gone underground, waiting for a safe space to resurface. 2 years after her return, Delilah called me with news that surprised no one but her. Miguel proposed, she said, her voice full of wonder. And? I said yes. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. I'm terrified, she admitted. Why? Because I've never been married to someone I actually love. I don't know how to do it right. Nobody knows how to do it right, I assured her. You just show up every day and try your best. What if my best isn't good enough? Then you try again tomorrow. That's what marriage is, a series of second chances. She was quiet for a moment. Will you be my maid of honor? I started crying before I could answer. Yes, I finally managed. Of course I will. The wedding was small and perfect. Miguel's daughters served as bridesmaids, wearing dresses that Delilah had taught them to sew themselves. Iris was the flower girl, taking her job so seriously that she counted each petal as she scattered them down the aisle. Delilah wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers from her garden. Miguel wore a traditional Portuguese vest that his mother had embroidered decades earlier. They exchanged vows in English and Portuguese, promising to be partners, friends, and anchors for each other. There was nothing calculated about their words, just two people making honest promises about the life they wanted to build together. During the reception, Delilah pulled me aside. I want to show you something, she said. She led me to a small table where she displayed photos from throughout her life. Childhood pictures of us together. Photos from her first wedding that looked staged and formal. Recent pictures with Miguel's family that were candid and joyful. But the centerpiece was a photo I'd never seen before. A candid shot someone had taken at my wedding, showing Delilah and me hugging while laughing about something I couldn't remember. When did you get this? I asked. Mom took it. She gave me a copy last month. I studied our faces in the photo. We both looked genuinely happy, genuinely connected. I keep it on my nightstand, Delilah said, as a reminder. Of what? That some things are worth the risk of trusting completely. 5 years later, I'm writing this story while sitting in Delilah and Miguel's backyard, watching our children play together. Iris is 8 now and has appointed herself the leader of their multi-generational, multilingual crew. Miguel's daughters, now college graduates, are home for the summer and apparently find their little American cousin endlessly entertaining. Delilah is pregnant with her first biological child, a development that has surprised everyone, including her. "I never thought I wanted to be a mother," she told me when she shared the news. But then I realized I'd never wanted to bring a child into the world I was living in before. This world, with Miguel, with you guys, with his daughters, this is a world where I can imagine raising someone. She's due in December, and she's already started a nursery that looks nothing like the sterile perfection of her old house with Brennan. This room is warm and colorful, filled with handmade blankets and toys carved by Miguel's father. "Are you nervous?" I ask her now, watching her rub her growing belly, constantly, but not about the same things I used to worry about. "What do you mean?" "I used to worry about protecting myself from other people's motives. Now I worry about protecting my children from my own cynicism." She looks out at the kids playing in the garden. "I don't want this baby to grow up thinking that love is something you have to earn or defend against. I want them to know it's something you can simply receive. You'll figure it out," I tell her, "and Miguel will help, and so will we." I know, that's the strange part. I actually believe that now. As the sun sets, Theodore emerges from the house carrying a tray of drinks. Miguel follows with a guitar, which he starts tuning while the kids beg him to play their favorite Portuguese folk songs. This is the life Delilah chose after she stopped playing games. This is the family she built after she learned to trust people. And this is the sister I got back after I decided that forgiveness was stronger than resentment. It's not the ending either of us expected when we were younger. It's not the perfect fairy tale she used to perform or the cautionary tale I used to fear. It's something better. It's real. And for the first time in my life, real feels like enough.